When Line 6 released the HX Stomp some years ago, I honestly felt like it was one of the greatest, if not the best guitar pedal ever made. Do I still feel that way in 2024? Let's find out. So what I'm going to do in this video is explore 4 different types of tones in 4 different types of genres. And we're going to see if the tones still hold up, especially in this new world with a lot of competition. And to keep it fresh and fun, I'm going to try to use some amplifier models that I've either never used in the past or very rarely. Because I do have some favorite amp models when it comes to the helix amps, like the Line 6 Badonk, for example, for metal, or the Placator Dirty for crunch. So I'm not going to use those amplifier models in this video, because we all know how good those amp models are. So let's go ahead and dive in straight away with the modern rock clip using my ESP L3 EC1000T in charcoal burst with the Fishman Fluence classic open core pickups. And my amplifier of choice actually is an amplifier that I've basically never used in the past, and now that I've used it, I wonder why, because it sounds awesome. Let's take a listen. Check it out. Alright, that was a great, big, and fat rock sound. I loved that tone a lot. And of course, my amplifier model of choice was the Solo Lead OD, which of course is based on a Soldano SLO 100. I actually just got my first Soldano in the mail just now. The unopened box is standing right there. That's going to be very interesting for other videos. But I thought it would be a good opportunity to try that amp model once again, just to get in that vibe, and I'm loving it. It has a great character and a very rich saturation. For all the IRs in this video, I'm using OwnHammer impulse responses, of course, and for this tone, I was using an OwnHammer Rockbox IR with the V30 MV2001A speaker option, which is based on a Marshall vintage speaker with the modern 3 mic mix in the IR block, and also using a little bit of filtering to sculpt the tone a touch. And in the reverb block after the IR, I'm using the dynamic ambience effect, which is a great effect for adding some subtle room vibe to the tone. I really like that. And I like to do that very often with my tones because it adds a little bit of liveliness and a little bit of width as well. And then in the bridge section, I used the foot switch to punch in a modulation effect, which was the barber pole phaser. That's one of the legacy effects. So those were carried over from previous effects devices from Line 6, which is awesome, by the way. Because even though those effects are old, they still hold up really well. And it's just very cool to have access to all those old effects in the Helix and HX Stomp. By the way, for all the drums in this video, I'm using ML Drums by ML Sound Lab with my custom kit. And I also think those drums sound wonderful. In terms of the quality and realism of the amplifier models in the Helix or HX Stomp, I think they hold up really well, especially in comparison to the competition these days, also the more recent competition. I've done various comparisons on my channel with real amplifiers versus the Helix models, and they hold up really well in general. In a lot of cases, it's impossible for people to sort of hear the difference between the real amplifier and the Helix or HX Stomp models. And the fact that all the Helix amplifier models, including the bass amplifiers and the preamps and all the cabinets and all that stuff, are available in this little HX Stomp package still blows my mind. And that's one of the reasons why this is just such a powerful guitar or bass recording tool. And not to mention that you can even use this as your audio interface over USB and also use it for reamping and recording your DI tracks and all that stuff. So it's a great all-in-one recording solution for guitarists. And it's also very portable, obviously. So if you have a laptop rig and if you travel a lot, this is a great option. Or if you're on a budget and you just want all the tonal options that the big Helixes have to offer, for example. And in some cases, people just don't need all the capabilities that the big Helixes have, but they just want access to all the effects and the core tones, basically. This is also a very professional unit. So it's not just for the beginner or for people who are looking for an affordable unit. It's just incredibly powerful and flexible. Okay, let's move on to tone number 2, which will be the clean tone. And the guitar that I'm going to use for this one is my beloved Schecter E1 Apocalypse Red on the neck pickup. Let's go ahead and take a listen right now. Great! So for that tone, my amplifier of choice was the Jazz Rivet 120, which of course is based on the Roland Jazz Chorus. And those amplifiers are great for their clean tones, obviously, especially for the squeaky clean tones. And I also love the bright control, as that really lets you dial in the clarity and the brightness, which is especially great for humbucker neck pickups, for example, or just darker pickups. It can really help to open up the tone. And I have the bright control turned up all the way for maximum clarity. For the IRs, I'm using another OwnHammer Rockbox IR. And this time the speaker of choice is the M25B 1977A blackback speaker with the modern 3 mic mix. Once again, that's basically my favorite mic blend of the Rockbox speaker packages. I just really love the OwnHammer Rockbox IRs so much because of the wide variety of different speakers and also speaker brands that you can choose from. Just excellent. And then after the IR block, again, I'm using the reverb, this time with the dynamic plate throughout. And for this tune, again, I did switch some effects in and out. For the intro part and another bar later in the song, I switched on the transistor tape delay model, which is great. It's a delay with a lot of character. And then in the middle section, I also punched in the gray flanger, which is a great sounding flanger, and it added some nice movement to the guitars. With the foot switches on the HX Stomp, it's very easy to assign effects to the switches. Now, this only has 3 foot switches, of course, but you can make it more flexible by adding more switches. Or if you need more switching capability, you can also take a look at the HX Stomp XL, which has more switches on the unit itself. For me personally, for recording and studio use, these 3 switches are just fine. You can also assign multiple effects to one single foot switch, or you can use the Snapshots, which is also an awesome feature. More on that in a minute. And of course, you can even control the HX Stomp via MIDI, which is, of course, amazing. And you can basically control anything that this unit does over MIDI, which is great for using this thing live in your rack, for example, or with a MIDI controller, stuff like that. And for playing live with multiple effects and stuff, the stereo effects loop also can come in very handy. Now let's move on to tone number 3, a good old heavy metal tone, a modern metal tone with my Schecter Sunset 7 Triad 7-string baritone guitar. And again, I promise I'm not going to use my favorite metal amp, the Line 6 Badonk, this time. I'm going to use something else. Let's see what sort of tones I've come up with. Check it out. Oh yeah, those were some great tones indeed. And this time my amplifier of choice was the PV Vitriol Lead, which is based on a PV Invective 120. I also have that real amplifier here in my studio. It's a really cool amplifier, basically a modded or modern version of the PV 5150. In the IR block, I used my favorite OwnHammer IR for metal, which is the OwnHammer Essentials Low Tuned with the high gain mic mix. And again, the IR block is followed by the reverb block with the dynamic ambience once again. And this time I used the Horizon Drive distortion pedal in front of the amplifier for more tightness, punch, and clarity. And that's a great drive pedal for that purpose. And again, I did switch some effects in and out here and there. I used the chorus pedal and also the auto filter here and there for some quick accents. For the final tone, I want to get some more classic rock tones with my Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s with the Seymour Duncan JB pickup in the bridge. And this time I want to use the Snapshots feature. Okay, let's take a listen. Wonderful, nice and crunchy. Now, normally my go-to amplifier for this type of genre would be the Placator Dirty Amplifier, which is based on a Friedman BE100. That's just a wonderful, wonderful amp model. But this time my amp of choice was the Brit Plexi Jump, which of course is based on a Marshall Plexi. It had a nice raw character and a very mid-forward tone, which I really enjoyed for this type of genre. In the IR block, after the amplifier, again I'm using an OwnHammer Rockbox IR. This time the M25L 2003A greenback, again with a modern 3 mic mix. And after the IR block, I'm using the reverb block once again with the dynamic room ambience for a little bit of a roomy sound, a bit more extreme than the dynamic ambience. So that's the core tone basically. And then I have 3 snapshots going on. Snapshot 1, snapshot 2, and 3. Now snapshot 1 is basically that core tone, but with a modulation block enabled in front of the amplifier, which is the script mod phase. For snapshot 2, the phaser is turned off, and the drive block is turned on in front of the amplifier with the Stupor OD pedal, which is based on a Boss SD1. And then snapshot 3 has that drive pedal on still, but with a chorus in front of the drive pedal for a nice 80s style rhythm tone, basically. And those are just some very simple examples of how you can use the snapshots, because you can go much more in depth with that. You know, you can assign various amp control changes, for example, or effect control changes with the snapshots, so it's a very powerful feature. For example, you could have an amplifier with more mids and less gain on snapshot 1, and then for snapshot 2, add a little bit of gain in the amplifier, and then for snapshot 3, you know, add a pedal up front and a delay after the amplifier and crank the mids and the gain even more on the amplifier. The possibilities are basically endless. So we've explored 4 different types of tones on the HX Stomp and also discussed a little bit of the capabilities that this pedal has to offer. We're basically scratching the surface here. So this thing is capable of a lot of things, both in terms of the capabilities and the options, and also the amount of effects and amp models that it has to offer. So again, it has all the amplifiers and all the effects that the big helixes have to offer. It just has less DSP and only 1 signal chain with a maximum of 8 blocks per preset. And those sort of limitations can be expected from a more affordable and more compact version of the helix, basically. The big helix still holds up in 2024, as I recently concluded in another video. And I think the HX Stomp still holds up very, very well in 2024 as well. It's an excellent pedal. I love it. It's the GOAT. It really is an amazing pedal that's incredibly hard to beat, especially considering the feature set, the size, and the price as well. So this is basically a pedal that everybody should own, even if this is the only pedal that you can own, because it basically does everything that you need. So the things that you can do with this pedal are really impressive, but most of all, it just sounds really, really good, even to this day. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you found it useful. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, as that really helps the channel out. I'd really appreciate it. And of course, also let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the HX Stomp after all these years. You can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook and Instagram, by the way. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.